but I think I can stop it. I think I'm meant to.
Then I'm with you. I love you. Grass?
The black dragoness blinked furiously to try and clear her vision. Though it was still impaired, she heard what she believed to be running water close by. Eventually, she began to see shapes, then colours, and finally began to see clearly again. She realised she was standing in a patch of grass next to a small river.
Am I back in the Valley of Avalar?
She followed the river and instantly recognised where she was. She was standing on top of a waterfall overlooking the Valley of Avalar. In the distance, she could see Hunter's village, still partially destroyed from their previous stay. She couldn't see anyone there, so she assumed they were still in Warfang. She was relieved the valley wasn't showing any signs of permanent damage after Spyro prevented the planet's destruction.
Spyro!
Cynder frantically looked around her to see if he was anywhere near, but unfortunately for her, she could not find him. She began to become more worried as she looked back down into the valley, frantically looking for any sign of him. She was right next to him when Spyro stopped the destruction of the planet. Surely he would have ended up close to her here as well. Her eyes widened when she spotted something purple floating down the river below her. There was no doubt in her mind that it was him, but her heart sank when she noticed he wasn't moving.
Spyro!
Cynder attempted to use her wings to glide down and catch him, but the strain from their recent battle finally caught up with her. She now realized how little energy she had. With all her might, Cynder tried to slow her descent, but it was no use. She crashed into the river, a good distance behind Spyro. She attempted to climb out of the rushing water, but her weakened body simply couldn't pull her out of the rapids. She eventually managed to lift her head a bit, and saw Spyro floating in front of her. But before she could react, the powerful current pushed her into a rock protruding from the river, causing her to hit her head and quickly losing consciousness.
Spyro.
Cynder snapped awake and immediately attempted to stand, but was quickly met with incredible pain all over her body. She grimaced and laid back down before looking at her surroundings. She noticed that she wasn't in the water anymore, but she was having trouble in recognizing where she was. Her head was throbbing in pain, making it difficult to think straight. She was laying on the edge of a small cliff overlooking a waterfall, and she was surrounded by natural walls. She felt like this place was familiar to her, but she still couldn't figure out why. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of rustling leaves behind her. She turned her head and saw a cloaked figure climbing down a set of vines towards her. The strange figure was carrying a purple dragon on his shoulders.
Spyro?
The figure carrying him reached the base and slowly turned towards her, revealing the creature to be a cheetah with bluish-white fur. He carried the unconscious dragon over and gently laid him next to her.
Ah, the terror of the skies has awoken.
I know you, don't I?
Yes, you two were here only 3 days ago.
You're the Hermit, right?
Indeed. You seem to be full of surprises, don't you?
What do you mean?
We will speak about that later. For now, tend to your companion.
With nothing else to say, the hermit left the two dragons to grab his staff before climbing back into his small home. Cynder slid her body as close to Spyro as she could, her own body still incredibly weak. She was relieved to see that he was still breathing, and had only a few visible injuries.
Spyro?
His only response was a weak groan, but that was all Cynder needed. He just needed more time to rest.
Rest easy, Spyro. You've earned it.
She lowered her head down and gave him a soft nuzzle on his cheek before joining him in sleep. The next morning, Cynder's eyes stirred as rays of sunlight started to shine into the Hermit's Valley. She slowly awoke with a groan, looking around as her vision and memory returned to her. She instantly remembered where she was, and looked to her left, seeing Spyro still unconscious next to her. To her surprise though, 2 small red crystals were placed in front of them. Cynder hastily took one and smashed it into the ground, instantly feeling the healing effects through her body. While she still felt weak and her head was still throbbing, she finally had the strength to stand. After she had stretched her limbs, Cynder lifted Spyro's paw onto the remaining red crystal. She pressed down as hard as she could, and managed to break the crystal, sending its healing effect into him. Once the red glow faded, any visible wounds Spyro had disappeared, but he remained fast asleep.
He will be resting for some time.
Cynder jumped in shock and quickly turned around, seeing the hermit standing behind them.
What do you mean?
The power it took to counter that of the destroyer overwhelmed him. He may have saved the world, but it came at a heavy price. It is lucky he survived at all.
How long will it take?
That all depends on him. If he's willing and strong, he will awaken soon.
He has the strongest will I know. He'll be just fine.
We shall see. In due time, won't we?
The hermit asked rhetorically, before turning around to leave them be again. Before he managed to get too far though, Cynder asked,
Why are you helping us?
The hermit paused and remained silent for a moment. Then, without looking back at her, he said,
Because you have proven me wrong, Cynder.
In what regard?
During your last visit, I warned the 3 of you that, like all the other creatures who served the Dark Master, you were doomed to join him once again.
Well, you are right. It was so easy for him to take over my mind and attack Spyro.
But you broke his control over you, did you not? You used a force that Malefor would never understand.
And what was that?
Again, there was a pause, before the hermit slightly turned his head back to her, with a sly smile.
Why ask? You already know the answer.
It didn't take long for Cynder to understand what the strange cheetah meant, causing her to smile and turn her attention back to Spyro, allowing the hermit to return to his home. Cynder returned to Spyro's side, softly lying next to him, ensuring he was still breathing well enough. She then moved his body around, in an attempt to make him more comfortable. Once she felt he was as comfortable as he could be, she laid down perpendicular to him and laid her head on his chest, listening to his deep breathing. From his hole in the wall, the hermit watched them curiously. He knew what it was that pulled Cynder back from the dark, but he couldn't understand how it could possibly be more powerful than the Dark Master.
Love is the strangest element of all.
Several days had passed, and Cynder had barely left the still unconscious Spyro's side. She continued to care for him every way she could, with the crystals the hermit continued to provide them. She now felt like she was almost back to full strength, confirming this by testing her elements. She managed to perform all of her techniques, but quickly felt drained each attempt. In time, she knew she would get back to her old strength again, but for now, her focus was just to get Spyro to wake up. After a week had passed, Cynder was watching him closely when the cheetah returned with more crystals.
Oh, why isn't he waking up? It's been a week now. He should be awake.
After placing the crystals next to him, the hermit asked,
Do you see the world around you?
Yes.
Do you see it falling apart?
Starting to see where he was going with this, she hung her head and said,
No.
It is because of him that you don't. While you two were fighting Melafor, the planet was crumbling, but he stopped it. It takes tremendous power to destroy a planet, and even more to counter it. This young dragon may have bitten off a bit more than he could handle, and his body will take time to recover.
I know.
You don't have to tell me. Just be patient.
With that said, he returned to his small home, leaving Cynder alone with her thoughts. She knew why, but she couldn't fight her impatience. She wanted to talk to her closest friend again and finally tell him what she truly feels. With nothing but weak groans, though, there were no signs of him getting better. With nothing better to do, she decided to try talking to him.
We finally get some peace and quiet and all you do is sleep. Maybe if I lure some apes over here, you'll wake up ready to fight.
She couldn't help but chuckle at her own joke. She felt that talking helped to comfort her a bit, so she decided to keep going.
The Guardians always warned of Malefor's tremendous power, but actually facing him, I don't think anyone knew what they were so scared of. Regardless of the power you were born with, Spyro, I feel it was almost too easy. The fully grown Dark Master couldn't beat 2 dragons our age. I think it's kind of pathetic, don't you? We even gave him a 3-year head start.
She paused, as if she were expecting him to respond. In her mind, though, she envisioned what he would have said.
No kiddin'. Even Sparks could have defeated him.
Right? But if anyone had to do it, it was you.
Not just me. I couldn't have done it without you, Cynder.
That's not true. You're the legendary purple dragon. You didn't need me.
But I did, Cynder. I still do.
Even though his words were in her head, she couldn't avoid blushing and turning her head away.
And I need you too, Spyro.
When she turned back to him, she was disappointed he was still unconscious. With a sigh, she laid her head next to his, slowly drifting to sleep.
Cynder.
Cynder shot her head up at hearing her name, hoping to see Spyro awake. To her surprise, though, she was no longer next to Spyro, or even in the hermit's cave. Instead, she was now lying in an ancient-looking temple. It appeared to be similar to the one she met the Guardians in, but it was in far worse shape than she remembered. In front of her was a seeing pool, similar to what she once saw Igniters use.
How did I get here?
Cynder.
The voice once again called to her, causing her to jump in surprise. It sounded as if it came from the pool in front of her.
Who's asking?
I'm known as the Chronicler. We met when you and Spyro were escaping the catacombs.
Yeah, I remember now. You helped us reawaken our elements. But what am I doing here, and where is here?
You are in a realm close to convexity, only reachable through dreams. Spyro has been here several times, but in his current state, unfortunately, I am unable to reach him.
Can you help him? Can you wake him?
Fear not, Cynder. Spyro will awaken soon. And in the meantime, there is something I would like you to tell him for me.
And that is?
Tell him to lead the two of you to the White Isle. I have something I wish to show the both of you.
The White Isle. Where's that?
It is where I live and record the events of our world, including your most recent defeat of Malefor. Spyro will know how to find it, for he's been there once before.
The pool in front of her began to glow with a bright light. Cynder could feel herself waking up, the temple around her beginning to fade away.
I shall be awaiting your arrival.
But...
Wake up, Cynder. Wake up.
Cynder, wake up.
The Black Dragoness groaned as she began to open her eyes, the bright rays of the sun temporarily blinding her vision. After blinking a few times, she saw that she was still in the home of the Hermit. When she turned her focus to where Spyro was sleeping, she gasped in shock when she saw that he was no longer sleeping. Instead, his head was raised and he was looking right at her. For a moment, the two stared at each other, until Spyro gave her a soft smile.
Glad you're finally awake.
I'm finally awake? You're the one who's been asleep for over a week.
Yeah, I guess I really needed that. But it was worth it all in the end, right?
I would say so. You did stop the destruction of the planet, but that doesn't mean you can scare me like that.
I'll keep that in mind the next time the planet is being destroyed.
The two shared a short laugh before going silent again, both of them smiling at the other. Cynder was feeling an emotion she had only experienced a couple of times before, and her heart was pounding in her chest. She was fighting to keep those emotions inside, and chose to lean into her companion, laying her head softly on his neck. He returned the gesture by wrapping his wing around her, pulling her closer to him. Cynder couldn't help but let out a sigh. For once in her life, she truly felt at peace. In this moment, all of Cynder's fears were gone. The horrible memories of the atrocities Malefor and Ghoul forced her to do no longer mattered. She finally found what she left the temple to find 3 years ago. Her destiny was to be right here, with the dragon she cared for more than anything.